Why are so many Americans willing to support hate? Tom Hartman explains next. Like, subscribe, and share with your friends and family.
There's a couple of questions that I wanted to get into. Number one, why are so many Americans willing to support hate and division? And I mean this as a serious question. It's not just a throwaway. I'll get into some detail here. Donald Trump has told us now, yesterday he tweeted, only 9,000 Americans have died from coronavirus. Right? Everybody else had a pre-existing condition. They were old, they were overweight, they had diabetes, they had heart disease, they had asthma, whatever it may be. And therefore, only 9,000 people have died of coronavirus. He also told us that shooting an unarmed man in the back 7 times is the same thing as having a bad putt at golf. He told us that protests around America against his policies and against racism are actually being led by an airplane full of black-jacketed thugs. Thugs, the word that Trump has used most of his life to describe black people. And he refused to condemn a vicious murderer who killed 2 people and blew the arm off a third. While, crying crocodile tears off another guy who got killed here in Portland, a right-winger, apparently shot by a left-winger. But when left-wingers get shot by right-wingers, oh, well, that's self-defense. That's just fine. And now he's threatening the mayor of Portland with federal troops again, which raises the question, is this the America that America, that the majority of voters want to live in? Or even a substantial minority? I mean, a country where the police act as an occupying force and are relatively immune to oversight or discipline? A president who pits people against each other based on their religion or on the color of their skin? An administration that lies about science as about 200,000 Americans die? Corrupt former lobbyists in charge of virtually every federal agency? Cutting the Social Security tax so that the entire program collapses in the next 3 years? Is this what America wants? Well, if the polls are any indication, about half of Americans actually are right there with him. Why would that be? I mean, is the racism so deeply ingrained in the white community in America that white people will regularly turn out to vote for politicians who use racial dog whistles? Seems so. I mean, it certainly worked for Republican candidates ever since Richard Nixon in 1968 with his Southern strategy. That was the direct result of the 1964-1965 passage of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. When Lyndon Johnson confided in Bill Moyers, his press aide at the time, that by signing those pieces of legislation, he worried that the Democratic Party might have lost the South for a generation. Well, it's been 4 generations since then, maybe 3. And yeah, white people are still voting race hugely. The main subtext of Donald Trump's sales pitch and of the entire Republican convention, and I kept, Louise and I watched this together, and I kept, there they go again. They're going to move into your suburban neighborhood. Those black people, those brown people, they're going to move into your suburban neighborhood. I will stop them. That was the message. The Republican Party will stop them. Mitch McConnell will stop them. Don't worry, your property values aren't going to go down. You see, those are the 2 big memes. Right? Black people are going to move into your neighborhood and burglarize your house and rape your wife and daughter. Or black people are going to move into your neighborhood and your housing values are going to go down. And this is the Republican sales pitch. And it looks like somewhere in the neighborhood of half of America. In Texas, it's 50-50. In Ohio, it's 50-50 right now between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Half of Americans are like, yeah, that's our biggest fear. COVID, well, not so much. The economy going in the town, well, what can you say? And then there's a second topic here, and it's one we're going to dig into more deeply in the second hour with John Dean, and that is that as our nation sinks deeper and deeper into poverty, and make no mistake about it, that's exactly what's been happening for 40 years. As this nation sinks deeper and deeper into poverty, before the COVID crisis and the Trump recession actually started in February, before COVID, when we had only 5 cases here in the United States or something like that. That's when our country went into recession. It was the end of, the longest expansion in history, frankly. It was perfectly expected. But back then, only 40% of American families could deal with a $400 expense, and only 30 or 35% of American families could deal with a $1,000 unexpected expense. I'm guessing right now that number is probably more like 15 or 20% of Americans who could deal with that. And what happens is, as people lose their economic security, as they lose their job safety, they become, frankly, more vulnerable to an authoritarian message. There's all kinds of studies that show that conservative voters have more authoritarian tendencies, and that Trump followers are right at the top of that list. A few months ago, one of the big stories, I talked about it here on this program. You and I we all talked about it, that a substantial percentage, and I'm sorry I don't have the study right in front of me, so I can't give you the exact number, but it was in the 40% range, think that if the military were to take over this country, it would be an okay thing, or maybe even a good thing. Now, historically, when people were asked that question, the number of people who said yes was around 5, 10, 15%. In the same neighborhood of people who think that the second coming is next week, and UFOs are actually running the White House. So you've got this poll, also another one that, basically this is about as police state authoritarian as you can get, the military taking over the country. Or could it be both? Racism and authoritarianism. That right-wing media like Fox News and Hate Radio have so succeeded in selling racial fear so effectively to white people that even modest racist inclinations among some white people are enough to tip them into embracing violence and authoritarianism. And right now, nobody knows the answer. Why is it? There is this is from Psychology Today. Trump followers show 5 traits: authoritarian personality syndrome, social dominance orientation. That's where you want to be part of a group that is viewed as the group on top. Prejudice, this goes back to Nixon's Southern strategy. A lack of contact with other groups. In other words, in fact, studies have shown Trump's white supporters have significantly less contact with minorities than other Americans. And what's called relative deprivation. It means I feel like I'm not getting my share of what I'm entitled to. And of course, the irony here is that who killed the middle class? Ronald Reagan and the Republican Party.